Okay, for those of you working on the second problem on your homework, I'm going to do an example that's sort of like it because that question involves some factoring and it's been a while since we did that. So let's say I have this picture. I have this triangle right here, ABC, and I'm given the fact that BD is a median. And I know AD is 4x plus 15, so I'm going to label that in my picture. 4x plus 15. And I know that CD is x squared plus 2x. I'm going to label that also. And I'm going to make my pen a little bit smaller. Okay. So medians cut sides of triangles in half. So that means this point D is a midpoint of AC. And that means that the x squared plus 2x side and the 4x plus 15 side have to be equal. So I'm going to set up an equation and it's going to say x squared plus 2x equals 4x plus 15. Now, if we didn't have that x squared, we'd be golden and we could figure this out. However, we do have the x squared, which is sort of annoying, because when you see an x squared, you should think factor. And you can only factor if you have something on this left side of the equation equals 0. And right now we have a left side of the equation equals something on this right side of the equation. So we need to make this say something equals 0. So to do that, I'm going to subtract the 4x from both sides. And I'm also going to go ahead and subtract the 15 from both sides so we get rid of everything. And I'm going to write this over here, that result. That gives you x squared. 2x minus 4x is negative 2x. And since there is no constant term, 0 minus 15 is just negative 15. And then equals 0. And now this we can factor. So when we factor, we make our two sets of parentheses. And since this is just plain old x squared, I'm going to put an x at the beginning of each set. I'm going to keep my equals 0 over here at the end. And I need to think of numbers that multiply to give me 15 and add to get me 2. And if you think of your factors of 15, 3 and 5 should come to mind. And you can combine 3 and 5 to get 2 somehow. And when you multiply them, you get 15. So I'm going to use 3 and 5. And then I have to decide which one gets the plus sign and which one gets the minus sign. Whatever this sign is in front of that middle term, your bigger factor is going to take responsibility for that. It's going to take that sign. So since this is a minus, my 5 is going to get the minus. So I'm going to have x minus 5. And then since I want to get negative 15 when I multiply, I need this 3 to be plus because a positive times a negative is a negative. Now we're not done because we don't have x equals a number. We have just factored this quadratic equation right here. So to actually solve for x, this is just multiplication of a number. This number times this number has to be 0. So to figure out what x actually is, I'm going to make each of those two terms equal to 0 and solve. So I'm going to have x plus 3 equals 0. And I'm going to have x minus 5 equals 0. And when you solve each of those, you get x equals negative 3 or x equals positive 5. So those are both good answers. But we need to double check that when we plug this in, we're not going to get a negative number. So if I go up here, and instead of x I put negative 3, I'll have negative 3 squared plus 2 times negative 3. That's 9 plus negative 6. That's positive 3, so that's good. And if I plug that into the 4x plus 15, I'll have 4 times negative 3 plus 15. That's negative 12 plus 15, which is a positive 3. So those two are positive. That's good for us. If I plug in a positive 5, since all this is positive, I'm going to get all positive numbers. 5 squared is 25, 2 times 5 is 10, add those together, that's positive. 4x times, 4 times 5, that's 20, that's positive, plus 15, that's still positive. Okay? So when you plug in your 5, you're going to get positive numbers for your side lengths too, which is good because you can't have a negative distance. So your answer, you should have two numbers. You should have x equals -3 or x equals -5. And make sure you double check that when you plug each of those in for your x, you don't get a negative number, because otherwise that portion of the answer doesn't work.